Do you want to just kick it off, Noah?
Sure. Hi, Ken. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, sure.
Um, so basically, the goal today is to sort of either solve or like either get a plan in place for dealing with some search engine optimization or just enumerate some things we need to go learn about to figure this out. So the problems that we're facing are that uh, we host documentation for all the different versions of Ceph. So like Mimic, Master, but all the way back to like Bobtail is like online. And if you go to Google and start asking questions about different parts of Ceph, you may get uh, directed to Master, or you might get directed to something from 8 years ago. It's like it's a little bit of a problem. So we figure there's probably things we want to change on this like way we structure the documentation, but then we figured there's also parts of like metadata or something like this that we want to expose to Google and other search engines so that they like can do a better job of figuring out what we want to give users. Um, and I've read a little bit about it, but you posted in on the mailing list about something called Canonical, and then so we invited you because you seem to know way more than than we do. So we would like to learn from you.
Sure. I mean, I should say I'm like not a professional web developer at all. But
Sure.
I'll just leave that as my only disclaimer and move on.
Okay.
So I remember this because the Apache software had this problem like several years ago. And when I was reading, like, I subscribed to Apache Devil, and this was probably like 5 or 10 years ago. But they were talking about this exact same problem because, so many people link to the older versions, right? And then those things go up in Google's rankings. And so there was a guy, I think it was actually Rich Bowen, and I think he works for Red Hat. Um, but he's in OSAS now, and he had suggested on that list, like, hey guys, we should put in the rel canonical, link in the in the head section of the HTML, and then that will, redirect the search engines to treat this as the canonical version of the page. So I was thinking we would probably want to do that for Ceph. You know, in order to keep it very, very lightweight and minimal, you could do that just for master and have, all the docs point to master as the canonical version, because that branch name will never change. And then I noticed that Apache does something a little bit different too, where um, they have like a current alias. So
Hmm.
like if you go to slash current for their docs, I guess it gives you the most stable one. I think Ansible does this as well, for their docs. So that would be another idea if you wanted to get more fancy.
Okay. So I'm not sure how much of the improvements you've been following. The last round of improvements we merged at the end of last year were a system for putting banner ads, not banner ads, they're like banners on all the pages. So if you visit master, for example, it'll tell you that you're looking at a development version. Or if you visit Mimic, it'll say this is a stable and current ported version. Um, and the reason I mention that is because uh, it seems like choosing what version to use for the canonical version is like somewhat important. And master makes sense because if you just go to docs.ceph.com, you go to master. But I'm wondering if that should actually go to like Mimic and then go to Nautilus coming up, where if you were curious about looking at master, you could navigate there explicitly.
Yeah, definitely. I think the problem has always been like, you know, having somebody to like go into the server and do that or whatever. But if
Yeah.
it's just something simple like in the RST or if it's in Ceph's code base, then that would be a lot easier.
Um, yeah, we'd have to coordinate with whoever is doing the server side stuff, I suppose. But hopefully we would be able to just maybe do that with some symlinks or something. I'm not sure how hard that would be. Um,
Yeah. I know like historically that's probably the reason why a lot of this stuff has I don't know what you call it, grown weeds or kind of fallen by the wayside is because we had these things that were so infrastructure heavy, and then it was very hard to just change like a file in GitHub or whatever.
So does
Ben, are you in an airport?
Canonical?
No, I'm actually in like a co-working space here. They have a very small office here in Denver, and they had like a lunch, so got to meet all the Coloradans.
Oh, that's cool.
Hey, Ollie.
Hey, Ali. Do you want to tell us a little bit what your takeaways or what you are interested in out of this meeting?
Yeah, wait, hold on. I think I interrupted a conversation. I'm very sorry about that.
Okay.
I feel like
We can come back
definitely
to
in the
you.
middle of a sentence, and you should definitely finish that.
Yeah. So I was asking Ken, when it comes to canonical, is that a tag that goes on? You would just put it on, like, say, master or on Nautilus or something, or would you put the canonical tag on all pages of documentation so that they point to a single? That
Yeah, it would be the latter. So
okay?
we just update the Sphinx template or whatever it is for every single branch, and then push all of those.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Um, yeah, that makes sense. And you'd want the canonical to be more like, I guess, an alias, right? So you wouldn't want to like have canonical point to a specific version and then have to change all those pages every time you created a new version.
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be handy.
Okay.
I could imagine
But I
that would
think then,
be easier to implement.
yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So we would either point to master or point to, well, maybe it should definitely just point to docs.ceph.com, and then we can decide if that's going to go to master or to the latest stable.
Sure.
Okay.
I think the latest table makes more sense at this point because that's what people would be using. And master things might just be changing, and things that are relevant yesterday might not be relevant today. So mimic for now and Nautilus when it comes makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, my suggestion with that, if like you do end up using like a symlink or whatever, is just try to make Sphinx do that, or whatever it is, the Jenkins job that's running, do that for you, instead of like asking David Galloway, or whoever's running the server, like, hey, can you go update the Apache config or Nginx config or whatever it is? Like, can you SSH into this thing? Like, because then people will forget, right? Because we only bump that every, what is it, like year or something. So
Yeah, we'll try and figure out how that works and how we can automate it.
And I think the person who can help us with this is going to be David next, right? David Galloway.
Okay.
Ken, what do you think? Is David the right person?
I think if you have like specific things that you want to implement, like it sounds like building out that symlink, for example, then I mean, I don't know how familiar he is with the docs generation process. I mean, Kifu has done some work on that. Yeah.
Okay, I think it's a battle that everybody needs to find, but I mean, who of us knows a little more than the others would be the best.
Sure. Like, yeah, for the infrastructure, as far as like who runs the docs.ceph.com server, that would be David.
I suspect that we, like, if we just can figure out where the code is or something, like we can figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
But we should definitely maybe talk to David next to see what his thoughts are.
Yeah. I think that it should just all be in Jenkins Job Builder. I remember building that job like many years ago, um, but I definitely haven't touched it since then. So you guys know like the Ceph.build or Ceph-build repository on GitHub?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's all I know. So it'll be
Oh,
good.
okay.
It'll be good to find out what exactly it's used for, and what
Oh,
pieces are relevant to our
if you
use.
run like git grep docs in there,
Hmm.
you'll probably find the jobs that are generating the docs.
Okay. Okay.
Cool.
That's doable. Yeah.
The other thing that we had mentioned in the mailing list about SEO was using I think it's called the robots.txt file, which can be used to do things like tell a search engine to completely ignore certain prefixes. Um, and I felt like that might be really powerful. Like in some sense, we could just tell it to ignore bobtail and emperor, right? It's like those things. I'm not sure we even want to index them, but maybe if somebody knows more about robots, or maybe there's other ways to use it that's smarter than that.
I think that's a great idea to put in bobtail, cuttlefish, forget the dumpling, all the way up basically, up to hammer. I imagine you wouldn't want to index. Um, and then, yeah, you could probably have Jenkins write that file out for you, just add it onto the end of that job that's generating those. It basically just runs Sphinx or whatever it is, it's like make docs or something. And then it does an rsync into the docs server, and it puts, the HTML pages on the server. Um, so I imagine you could just tack on like, please write out this robots text file how we want and do that.
Do you happen to know if I mean, this is probably really easy to just go look up, but if we could whitelist instead of blacklist, and the reason I'm thinking about that is because, Jenkins will also be building all the branches,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah,
and stuff like
that's true.
that, and so it's like I suspect Google doesn't pick that robots up that fast, like faster
Yeah.
than we can build new stuff.
Yeah, good point. I think you can whitelist. Like you'd say exclude everything and then include except for this.
Um, I think that might be all that I know. I don't know any other SEO related questions. Maybe there's other stuff. Do you have any other information about this that we haven't thought of?
Other than you're doing a great job. I love the fact that you've had the releases in machine readable format now. That's great.
Oh yeah, yeah, cool.
So yeah.
Well, then I think the next step is to just go look at Ceph build and maybe also talk to David parallelly and figure out what we need to do.
Yeah, I hope that like anything that requires like a human to go in there and bump
Hmm.
something,
Right,
just
right.
try to write that down.
Hmm.
Because like this changed hands, even the docs have changed hands so much. Like Alfredo worked on a project to do this long, long ago,
Hmm.
with like picking the version dynamically, um, and that was pretty underdocumented. And then like just having like a standard thing of like this is what we do every time we create a new branch, like for Octopus, for example, here, like this is end to end what that means for the docs.
I'm really hoping that the machine readable um, releases file can be used to create this symlink automatically. Um, I
Yeah,
suspect
that
it
would be
will be.
awesome.
Like every time we build master, we can just have the Sphinx builder know if it's in the Jenkins context or something. It can create the symlink. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out, but that would be really useful.
I think that job might even run on the Docs server itself. I can't remember.
Yeah, yeah. And there's like 20,000 branches
Yeah,
there.
right. Yeah, I don't think anything's ever deleted any of those. I might be wrong.
Okay, well that'll be fun to go investigate.
Right.
Um, I don't have anything else. I think we have a pretty good action item list right now.
Yeah, I agree. Ali, do you want to speak up now?
Yeah, might have one more thing to add to that action item list, and that is I come to you with free labor of an outreach intern. This person can work for you from June, July, and August, 40 hours a week on whatever documentation related stuff you guys could deem necessary, as long as you figure that out. And the intern could write like actual docs, or they can work on docs generation stuff. Either or, whatever upstream feels most fit. And this intern could also come to this meeting every week
Yeah,
and
that would
talk
be
about
great.
the progress that made. Would you guys be interested in mentoring or co-mentoring a project and putting it together?
What do
I
you say?
think
No,
Oh, and
I'm fine with it.
I mean I'm certainly interested in that. My initial thought was like figuring out how much stuff there is. Like I feel like if we worked on it full time, like there wouldn't be like 2 weeks worth of stuff to do. But maybe that's a good question for like the different stand-ups to address.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
and
the other,
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I think I know at least I always underestimate the amount of just stuff about Ceph that I know. So like what would take me and like what would take you guys probably 2 weeks would probably take an intern maybe 3 or 4 weeks, but that's just that's my guess. Um, but yeah, I talked to some.
My take would be.
I'll go ahead,
Sorry,
Danielle.
we're speaking together. I just think my take would be. I agree with Noah that just building those tools, and because we're talking about a timeline of June, which is probably 6 months from now, and we want to also ensure that we don't wait for that person to come and solve all our problems, and we want to keep making progress in the meantime. So I'm not sure what exactly is going to be left then, and based on what we prioritize right now, but I can see that as a combination of both the activities you just mentioned, having to do some of the tooling and improving the infrastructure behind documentation, and also talking to different leads and identifying their pain points with respect to documentation, and that gives the person an opportunity to learn about Ceph as well, instead of just tooling and UI and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I had initially thought of a project like this for the previous round. I'm sorry you guys don't have an intern right now. Um, because I guess this stand-up didn't exist in August, right? Or did it?
I don't think so.
Yes. But some of the actual like docs writers at Red Hat were interested in mentoring too. And I said all you have to do is like evaluate the PRs, like the actual, documentation that the interns write for, I don't know, like if is it understandable to read, is the content structured right, stuff like that. And that was where I initially thought about that. That's how I initially thought of an intern, just like moving around different teams and like helping them document stuff that's not already been documented. But I also realized that there's like just as much complexity in the documentation generation process. And that's probably actually better because it sounds like an outreach intern just writing docs for everyone is a bit of a band-aid solution.
I am not too sure that's going to work very well as well, because
Yeah,
writing
probably
docs
not. Probably
might
not.
not be very easy. We have
Yeah,
lots of things going on, and you really need proper mentorship to like explain to the person what needs to be written. Otherwise, it's just going to be a mess.
yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine writing documentation on like RGW, like for example. I don't know anything about it. Like
Yeah.
I just feel like it's I wouldn't. I don't even know what to say. I think that's a tough project for an intern. So, what if, I mean, the current Ceph documentation style, like the style of the website, has been around for like 8 or 9 years or something, right? I mean, it might be interesting for if somebody was felt compelled to like kind of reimagine the the look and feel.
Oh yeah, that would be cool. That would be really cool. Would they work more with Mike on that, or would they work more with this group on that?
It's hard to say. I mean, in some sense, we wouldn't be asking them to change any content, um, but more like proposing styles or something, or maybe structure, and then they could just show. Well, I don't. I mean, they could just show the community and get people's feedback, I suppose.
I think, yeah, we can help with the usability angle, or developer friendly angle of it, and Mike can take care of the generic doc stuff, how the web
Hmm.
page should look like, and all that kind of stuff, branding and everything else.
Hmm. I guess, is there anything that you really wish could get done, or like wish the docs could look like, but know that it would just take like way more effort amongst the three of you, or whoever else comes to the meeting to like do? And that way, like it's something that somebody could do full time, but if it doesn't pan out, then we're not like back a step or anything like that. That's a tough question, I know.
I don't think I have a small answer for that. There are lots of things which we can probably improve on, but we'd have to put in more thought and like identify clear deliverables and not just say, okay, this just doesn't look good, let's just change this exact part. We should have some structure while we think of a project.
Yeah. Or I
Maybe we
think
should.
at least the first like half or 60 to 70% should be pretty heavily structured. And
Mhm.
I feel like if the intern does do all of that like on time, then I think a whole bunch of other doors just naturally end up opening up that the intern could look at. And if the intern goes over, then they go over and accomplish that like in a longer time frame than we'd hoped or whatever. But yeah.
Okay. I think
Well, yeah,
we
just some food for thought. Guess besides checking in a week or two, is there anything else you need from me?
as in terms of documentation.
Oh, no, I meant like in terms of like trying to get a project up and going.
I think we can talk offline about that, because like that's probably going to be like other. It's not going to be documentation, and DocuBetter is not the right platform. We can talk offline. There is something else. I'm sure there
Okay.
are lots, but yeah, let's talk offline about that.
Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, I
Oh
mean,
yeah, and this
but
applies to
I
everyone
also
who's part of
know.
staff.
What I also want, I think you can help us with this, is you interact with a lot of students and people who want to contribute to Ceph but don't know where to start. We have these, this, if you look at the chat, we have this PR that got merged, and that lets you just fix documentation using the GitHub UI, or even like report bugs. And there's description on how a person can make use of that. So maybe when somebody asks you, you can just forward this and they can get at least some place to start off. And if they see something, they can just go fix it themselves and you know, do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that looked like a really cool PR. That was the one you sent me a little earlier, right?
I sent you a link to the projects thing. This is the PR, so that you can, if you want to look at the code.
Oh, okay. I mean, even if it's like extending this somehow, that's even possible.
All right, we have like 3 more minutes. Is there anything else we want to talk about while Ken and Ali are here? Any ideas or uh, anything else?
I was curious about the status of the JavaScript backports. I thought maybe Neha, you had merged back several releases, but I hadn't gone and looked to see if that was.
I think, yeah, we merged Luminous and Mimic, and we created a tracker for Jewel.
Okay.
So we need the backport is yet to be done. But I think
Okay.
we discussed it that it's going to be a smaller subset of this PR. So we just want like the banner to show up that this is an EOL release. And I think that's the last update on that.
Okay. I think it should be a cherry. You can just cherry pick the commit from Luminous or Jewel would be the easiest way to go.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Anything else, Ken or Ali? Do you have anything else to say?
Nothing from
All
me.
right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks
Ken, for
joining us.
joining.
Yeah.
Really useful.
Talk to you online. Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Yeah,
Thanks, everyone.
have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.